Bitcoin can really you in a very positive sense if you actually start seeing the world this way, and you see how fooled you've been throughout your entire life, and how much of your time and effort has been stolen by some shithead that had access to a money printer. No human being in charge of issuing money have been able to resist the temptation of issuing too much of it and enriching themselves at the expense of everyone else, which is theft. And it's always existed.
All the shitcoins being crypto alchemy. Like the idea of taking a cheaper metal and turning it into gold, as far as I know, was never very successful. And do we have a similar parallel happening in the crypto space where everybody's copying or trying to create the next Bitcoin?
What I find most crucial here and most important is to teach people why shitcoins are shit and why the Satoshi is special, and why you can't ever create something on Bitcoin that will be worth more than the Satoshi itself.
Hi guys, welcome to the Byte Federal podcast. My guest today is Knut Svanholm, one of Bitcoin's most original and poetic thinkers. He's the author of Sovereignty Through Mathematics, Everything Divided by 21 Million, and Bitcoin, Independence Reimagined. His work explores Bitcoin not just as money, but as a civilizational breakthrough, a discovery about truth, energy, and human freedom. He's a former sea captain turned philosopher, and Knut's journey from the open ocean to the open source world of Bitcoin itself is self-sovereign, unpredictable, and grounded in reality. Knut, among many other books that you've written, we're excited to dive in and find out as much about you today and your thoughts on Bitcoin as possible. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
So look, let's jump right into one of the things that you've said in the past that I think is so cool, which is Bitcoin is element zero, and it's a base layer for a new civilization. What does that mean to you?
This is an idea I got from another guy, so it's not my original idea. I wrote a chapter about it because I thought the idea was so beautiful. So the idea is from, credit where credit's due. The idea is from a guy called Jörg Hermsdorf, who had a talk about it on during an online the conference back in 2020, I think. And the idea is basically, if you, I'll try to do a TLDR on the theory. So you know the periodic table, you have all these elements, and the free market figured out that gold was a very suitable element for money because of gold's properties, which is gold is one of two stable mononucleidic metals. The other is thorium, I believe, or maybe I'm wrong about. No, it's not thorium. It's another one. I don't remember the name of the other one. But the thing is, the free market figured out that gold was good at as money because it was scarce and easy to verify that it was gold, and it had all these monetary properties. And if you know about alchemy, the idea of alchemy was how can you make gold out of cheaper base metals? And before people knew about chemistry and how chemistry worked, they thought that you could, maybe there was a way to make gold out of cheaper metals, which would have made the individual alchemist very rich, but at the expense of everyone else, because you would have destroyed the properties that made gold valuable in the first place if you could make it out of cheaper metals. The whole point is that it's expensive to produce, or expensive to dig up from the ground and refine and turn into coins. So instead, what would happen if you tried to reverse engineer an element for the purpose of being perfect money? And it would have to be as scarce as possible. The amount would have to be finite, or in other words, it would have to be expensive to find more of, and it would have to be divisible and transportable, ideally without completely weightless. And if you apply all of these things to what Bitcoin is, it really is reverse engineered perfect money. So and a reverse engineered element without mass. So it's an informational element. It contains maybe electrons, but no protons or neutrons, because it doesn't have any weight, since the information about the asset is the asset. So whoever has access to the information about it has the thing, which makes it completely unique. And framing it as an element on the periodic table is one way of explaining what makes it unique. And funnily enough, this is also what intrigued me about Bitcoin in the first place. I became hooked because there was this claim that there was something on the internet or something in the realm of computers that could not be copied. And that sort to me, that sounded outlandish. It sounded like as far-fetched as a time machine or something, because how could that work? Everything in computing can be copied, right? Because it's all data, it's all information, and information is by its very nature infinitely copyable. But it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realized why a Satoshi isn't copyable in the same sense, and that is because the ability to move it does not reside on a computer somewhere. The ability to move it is in your head, because the private key is what unlocks it, and the only reason that you act as if you own the thing is that you keep a secret from someone, and you find it very improbable that someone else has the same secret as you, whether that's the private key or the location of the private key or a PIN code to a hardware wallet or whatever it is. It's always a secret that you keep from someone else. And you also find it very improbable that the network will change to such an extent that the 21 million supply cap will ever be changed. You sort of you find it game theoretically implausible that these rules will change to a degree that will destroy the thing. Which we can get into the knots versus core debate here, but that's a sort of a sidetrack. But you can't really own a Bitcoin. All you can do is keep a secret from someone else, which makes it more powerful than owning physical things, really, because they're much harder to take from you. Yeah, I can threaten you and tell you to give me all your Bitcoins, but I have as the attacker, I have no idea how many you actually had. And that is true for every every single human being on Earth right now. Theoretically, all human beings could own all the Bitcoins. We could all have all the secrets. There's simply no way of knowing. You can't prove a negative. So yeah, this is why I'm doing, mainly why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why I got so enthralled, or whatever the word is, but by this enigmatic, what some people would call a technology. I call it more of a social innovation. I view Bitcoin as an agreement on a fixed set of rules, that we agree on this particular set of rules because they are more expensive to try to break than to just follow, and that's what allows for all the other wonderful stuff that comes along with it.
I couldn't help but thinking when you were talking about alchemy, all the shitcoins being crypto alchemy, right? Because I mean, like alchemy, like the idea of taking a cheaper metal and turning it into gold, as far as I know, was never very successful. And do we have a similar parallel happening in the crypto space, where everybody's copying or trying to create the next Bitcoin?
Yeah, all the time. All of crypto is that, but not very successful, because they die very quickly. They don't have a very long Lindy effect. The cryptos die. Uh, the urge to rug pull is so strong that people rug pull, and then they're gone. They are never decentralized, and they're never secure. There's always a cabal of people deciding over its fate, and therefore they're all shit. And at the end of the day, the very thing discovered with the discovery or invention of Bitcoin is the discovery of resistance to replicability. And by its very nature, that cannot be replicated. You cannot replicate resistance to replicability. It makes no sense. But I would say the most successful alchemy that was ever invented was central banking. A central banker is a successful alchemist. They have somehow fooled the entire planet that IOUs for gold are worth just as much as gold, which is absurd, since they can just print more of them, and they're not even keeping that a secret. Like they are printing more of them, and everybody knows that, and they still think that they are, ethical.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it absurd.
I mean, when we've had paper Bitcoin here in crypto space in the past, it's always blown up horribly because eventually in bear markets, people pull their coins back to self-custody out of fear. And it seems to expose, when that tide goes out, it seems to expose a lot of frauds. Do you think there's something big coming on that front again? Because
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people talking about, the ETFs, the corporatization, governments getting involved, that, there's the expansion of derivatives in the Bitcoin space as potential risks in regards to the next bear market exposing a lot of paper Bitcoin. Do you think that's feasible?
Absolutely. I mean, not your keys, not your coins is true for is always true. So unless you take self custody of your coins, they're not really yours in any practical sense. You're not in possession of them. It, you, Someone else has the secret that you ought to have,
Mm-hmm.
or someone else is keeping the secret for you, which means you have outsourced. The custody to a third party, which is what banking is. Outsourcing custody, like we've already seen what happens when we do that. We get robbed slowly but surely, thinking our IOUs are worth their weight in gold, or worth whatever the number on them says in gold, and they simply aren't. So I think that I mean this the ETFs and the strategic reserves and whatnot, they are this cycle's shitcoins, definitely. Uh, I mean, some of them might work for hundreds of years, uh, but at the end of the day, eh, even the most trustworthy ones, like MicroStrategy, for instance, and I mean, in I'm conflicted about MicroStrategy because uh, part of me loves what Saylor is doing because he's tapping into all this boomer money that would be unavailable to the Bitcoin space if it wasn't for his like vehicle for getting it in there. But also, you have to remember that all of MicroStrategy's coins are custodied by Coinbase, I believe, and which means that some guy at Coinbase has the private key, or maybe a couple of guys at Coinbase that have a multi-sig thing. But it's still, as I said, not your keys, not your coins is always true, and this some guy can fuck off and buy an island and just disappear someday. Like that is just the possibility of that ever happening sure stops me from buying into any of these things. And
Yeah.
also the idea that they could go up forever faster than the asset that they're built upon, that's also very weird and a very fiat-y thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
uh, why not just own the underlying asset that is also a medium of exchange over space and not only time? uh, why not do the real thing?
Right.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought that, I mean, if you just put Bitcoin in a portfolio, eventually it dominates the entire portfolio, and your portfolio is essentially worth 99% of whatever the the Bitcoin is worth. So why
Exactly.
why would the same thing not be true for a treasury company where they all maybe just basically become worth the Bitcoin they hold, regardless of any other business operation?
Yeah, I mean, why would they be worth more? uh, why would they be worth more than the Bitcoin they hold? All they're doing is adding a layer of risk to you not
Seems
holding,
like it.
and
Yeah.
that risk is you not holding your keys.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to you talked about Bitcoin being not being able to be copied. And so many people that I've talked to over the years, that's one of the first things they bring up is like, oh, there's lots of Bitcoins. There's Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin this,
Mhm.
Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond, all of them. So I mean, obviously the code can be copied, and Ethereum was started with a copy of the Bitcoin code, but there is to the sense that most of all of those projects have failed. There is this, reality that it cannot be copied. And so what is it from your perspective is it just the network effect? Is it the fact that Satoshi, we don't know who Satoshi is? Like, what is it that really sets Bitcoin apart? Is it got the special sauce? What do you think?
So, what makes Bitcoin special, and that this thing is resistant to replicability, but the other things aren't, is that a, a lot of it has to do with this immaculate conception thing. Satoshi disappearing being uh, one of the things that made it special. Uh, it's sort of like the analogy is if I take a shower and use a towel afterwards, I get I'll get dry. Like the towel will dry me up. But if I use the towel first and take the shower later, I will have a different result. So the the temporal order in which something takes place is super important in this. Uh, if if this is resistance to replicability, if this can deliver on its promise, if Bitcoin actually works, we will have to converge on one chain, and that is the chain with most work. Like that is Bitcoin, and anything else that tries to imitate that or replicate that or duplicate that or copy that or whatever you will uh, has to differentiate itself from the original thing to such an extent that it cannot be compared to it, because there is no incentive for people to use that other chain in the long run, since the one that has the most security is the one that is provably most likely to be finite for the longest time, which makes us converge to one and makes all the others scams at worst, and just uh, self-defeating uh, at best. I don't think that there's a way to ever duplicate this experiment. It's a one-time thing. The whole 21 million cap is the point. It has to be scarce. Otherwise, there's no point in doing this. That's why it's an agreement on a fixed set of rules, and that it's the only rule set that allows us um, to that that allows for this rules without rulers thing, where it's more expensive to try to break the rules than to follow them. So I like to use chess as an analogy. So the game of chess, if you know the rules to chess, you can play with any other chess player in the world, and the rules change by overwhelming social consensus, and they haven't been changed for almost 1,000 years, when there was a move called en passant that was introduced to chess. It's when you can take a pawn that has moved 2 steps, you can take it by, if you have a pawn next to it, then you can still take it and move to the other square. Are you familiar with this chess move?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, it's the latest addition to the rules of chess. And if you know these rules, you can play with any other chess player in the world. Uh, if you know some other rules, you may be able to play with a player here and there, but the social network of other chess players, your chess web of connections, is much smaller. So why would you even want to play that type of game when you can know the proper rules and play the bigger game? So you could play chess cash, for instance, or chess Satoshi's vision, where the board has 64 times 64 squares instead of 8 times 8, and there's just a couple of pieces in one corner. but nobody else plays that. You could play chess Therium, in which the rules change with every move, and there's a committee with a Vitalik on top that changes the rules with every move you make. And there's also a 70% pre-move. Or you could play chess Nero or Z chess, where you cannot know where the chess pieces are at all. Uh, you could play light chess, which is just like chess, but the black pieces start instead of the white ones, or something. That these are the cryptos, right? They are just like alternative rules of chess, and nobody plays them for a reason, because we have to converge on one set of rules that will make the game so much better because more people can play it. So, and Bitcoin is similar, I'd say.
So, Knut, when you realized this about Bitcoin, and that it couldn't be copied, how did it impact you personally? Like, what happened in your discovery of Bitcoin that gave you that aha moment, that put you down this rabbit hole, that caused you to write all these books and really think deeply about Bitcoin as element zero or a base layer for humanity?
I mean, I can't pinpoint a specific point in time where I discovered Bitcoin. It was more like gradual pennies dropping in
Uh-huh.
succession. One of the moments was, of course, the block size wars, and when the SegWit 2x hard fork was denied, which to me proved that the users were in charge and not the big money, the big players. So we won that battle. That doesn't mean we will win every war, but it sure meant that we won that battle. Uh, and it was just beautiful to see that Bitcoin actually delivered on its promise of decentralization. And to my knowledge, no other currency or cryptocurrency, I should say, no other shitcoin, if you will, has ever had anything even remotely similar in terms of proof of resilience, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a moment. Another moment was when I printed out a couple of paper wallets with QR codes on them. So there's an address and there's a private key, and I put the paper wallet. So it's a piece of paper that I put in an envelope, and I sealed the envelope, and I had already scanned the address, and I could send Bitcoin into the envelope. And I realized that at that moment that, holy shit, I just teleported value into a thing. I could teleport value into a bank vault and out of it if I was in the bank vault. But like, this is amazing. This is information money. This is completely different. And then you start falling down all these other rabbit holes with, like, the first thing is, of course, what is money in the first place? Like, what is this thing? And you realize that it's all about human interactions, and having humans having a way to do economic calculation and express value to one another. And then the Austrian economics praxeology rabbit hole is like endless too, and there's so much there. It feels like you finally find truth goggles that actually that allows you to see the world for what it really is, and not what the politicians want you to think it is. And that's just a beautiful thing to explore too, I think.
You brought up the fork wars or the block size wars, and I couldn't help but think about knots and core today.
Yeah.
And then it made me think about, I think you said something about in the past that the most intolerant minority wins. Do you remember saying that in one of your talks? I heard it, and it kind of reminded me, that Bitcoiners are kind of an intolerant minority, especially maxis. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective on knots and core, are we going into another potential fork war, or is this a nothing burger? Where do you stand in this debate?
Oh, this is a big one to unpack. this particular war is more nuanced than the block size war, because the block size war was about increasing the block size, which is pretty obviously about control rather than anything else, because it makes the chain bigger, and therefore it becomes costlier to run a node over time. But so does spam. So we had an exploit was found in February 2023, and some shitcoiners figured out a way to fool people that you could own pictures and put them on Bitcoin, so to speak. But there's so much there. Like, uh, I mean, I've been an advocate for not, or at the very least for not upgrading to core version 30 now, which is the latest version, just came out a week ago, or not even that, and it has a default op return policy that is different from the previous versions. It's super big now, and it's sort of like the equivalent of installing a giant waste paper basket next to your mailbox and asking shitcoiners to put their shit in there instead of putting it in the mailbox because it ruins the mailbox. That's the rationale behind it, allegedly, and I don't believe that will work. I think there will be more shit on chain because of this change. So what I find most crucial here and most important is to teach people why shitcoins are shit and why the Satoshi is special and why you can't ever create something on Bitcoin that will be worth more than the Satoshi itself. So I want to first and foremost call a spade and a scammer, and urge people not to fall for shitcoin scams, because what that's the only reason that spam exists, is that some people fall for the bullshit and buy and give these people money. Otherwise they wouldn't do it, because it's still costly to put shit on chain. But so if you put data on chain that is not monetary data, so it has nothing to do with sending or receiving value through a medium of exchange, then what you're basically doing is that you're giving this data to the entire world to see, because it's right there, it's on chain, so it's not really ownable by anyone. It's sort of like owning a star in the Andromeda galaxy. To own a monkey JPEG on chain is like owning a star in the Andromeda galaxy. Sure, you can have a fancy paper saying that you own it, but your ability to interact with it is exactly the same as anyone else's ability to interact with it. You can't really do anything with it, and you can't send it without a third party website saying that you did so, because all of that has to do with this chain analytics thing. It's not really attached to the Satoshi, because the Satoshi doesn't really exist. The Satoshi is just like the equivalent of a centimeter, even though money does not measure value, but a centimeter does not become more, or an inch, like you're in the States, so I'd say an inch. An inch does does not become more valuable just because I measure my dick with it. And now you disappeared.
Am I frozen again?
Yeah, your camera
Oh my
disappeared. But
gosh.
I'll keep on ranting.
You
Don't
keep on
worry.
going.
Yeah. So, by the way, do you know why a dick can never be longer than 12 inches?
No.
It becomes a foot. Anyway,
That's
that's actually a good shitcoin on Bitcoin analogy. Like it doesn't, the inch does not magically become a foot because because you put a dick pic on chain.
right.
Like, and this is what I want to teach people. Like any of these things, including the ABC, ERC, BRC 20 tokens or whatever they call them, like Satoshis can't be ordered without trusting a third party, which is an external site that has to process these things. So all of them are shit, all of them are scams, and don't fall for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big message I want to
So do you
spread,
think, like,
if any.
opening up the op return, do you think that's going to lead to uh, smart contracts, more JPEGs, more non-monetary transactions on chain, on Bitcoin?
I mean, I don't find a smart contract to be very smart.
Hmm.
Like, you already have all the functionality you could ever want in, a time lock, a timestamp, and just sending and receiving Bitcoin and a multisig. Like, I don't need any more functionality to a contract than that. And also, I don't. The only thing uh, time stamping a document can do, or that indeed anything on Bitcoin can do, is prove that a document existed at a point in time. It cannot prove ownership of anything, because you can't even prove ownership of a Satoshi, because you can't own them. They're just a secret you keep from someone else. They're like the not your keys, not your coins point,
Hmm.
which is also why, like, I don't. I don't really buy the whole CSAM argument from the not side. And the reason I don't is that, to me, all the data that comes in is shit. And I don't know, to a court, that they would necessarily deem it more CSAM just because the entire file was in an op return, instead of the entire file being cut up into smaller pieces into some other part of Bitcoin. It, like, to my node, it's still shit data, and the only thing that is internally important to Bitcoin is the Satoshi. Like, the the reward given by node runners to miners for doing, like, miners are supposed to be the employees of the network, that we reward them with newly minted Bitcoins because they facilitate our transactions and make the chain secure. So they are supposed to be the slaves, and we're supposed to be the masters. And we pay them in Satoshis for their services. So internally to Bitcoin, the Satoshi is absolutely sacred. It's the only thing that matters to it. So when you try to put these fiat games into this, that it can only do harm. I mean, I think Bitcoin will survive this. I don't know exactly how. I don't know if there will be a soft fork, or if we'll just. I think the incentive to put a really destructive shit on chain is very low. I don't think any
Hmm.
sane miner would ever do that, because that's really shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I know they like to shoot themselves in the foot sometimes by putting spam on chain, because they don't understand that will kill their business model in the long run. Uh, but there's a limit to what even they would want to do to harm, like how much they would allow themselves to harm themselves. So I don't necessarily buy that. um, but I absolutely do not see why this "if it ain't broke, don't fix it"
Right.
kind of thing, why that is there. Like, no one has been able to uh, clearly explain to me what this op return increase from 83 bytes to 100 kilobytes, why that's necessary,
Yeah.
how Bitcoin becomes
What does it
better money
fix?
because of that.
Right. I mean, like
Yeah, how does Bitcoin become.
at least in the block size wars, even though many didn't agree with them, the big blockers thought it was a fix for fees, right? They thought that they could
I
do
don't necessarily. I think many of the big blockers did not think that. They just saw
okay.
it as a means of centralizing the thing and taking
Ah,
control over it. So I think there
okay.
was a part of it
And that
that
was just
a part of
the
big,
pitch.
some big, yeah, some big blockers probably fell for their own narrative, but a lot of it was malicious too. And I see the same thing now. It's like, to me, it's the same battle that has always been since the beginning of time, which is 2009. Uh, it's shitcoiners versus Bitcoiners. Like, people who want to do other shit than just send and receive Bitcoin and use Bitcoin as their as their main unit of account. Uh, that's always going to be the fight. Bitcoiners who want to use Bitcoin as money, like
Hmm.
proper Bitcoiners, are always going to have to fight off these scammers wanting to piggyback of the success of resistance to replicability. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's unfortunate, but we'll see what happens. I don't believe it will kill Bitcoin, but I believe that it might lead to some more trouble for for like, even if I was to accept that the change is not that harmful, and that they might have had a good rationale for doing it, just the way Core has been communicating the whole thing has, uh, I mean, they've dug their own grave. They are so hated now by such a big part of the community, so they lost like so much. It did so much reputational damage to Core as a group of people. So yeah, it's very sad and unfortunate that it played out this way. Then again, Core 30 seems to be dead in the water. No one's upgrading yet, so it's minimal. Like the
That's
shitcoiners
good.
claim that for filters to work, uh, which means actually stopping a transaction. I think filters work even if they don't stop transactions, because they stop stuff from coming into my mempool, and that's what I'm interested in. So uh, even if they don't stop them coming onto the blockchain, it's so the uh, to my knowledge, you need about 92% of the nodes to actually for a filter to actually stop a transaction from propagating somehow, like
Mm.
from finding a way through the network. But the same is true for Core 30. Like you need Core 30 needs at least 8%, but like or 9 or 10% support to actually relay these large op return transactions. Uh, and also, there's probably a bunch of people that will run Core 30 but change the default. So yeah, we'll see what happens, and what we have to do about it when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would be very unfortunate if this caused more harm than it already has. I hope that it's all dead in the water. What I have seen and what I tweeted about this morning is some, what was that? Maybe I can see the tweet here. Um, yeah, they're saying they enable new that the this change enables new forms of crowdfunding, staking, and digital economies on Bitcoin layer one. I mean, we don't want any of that shit on layer
Mm-mm.
one.
Yeah.
If we want it at all, we want it on a layer two. And the only two things I can think of that are actually useful are for Bitcoin being money are things that make transactions cheaper and faster, and things that make transactions more private. Anything else is just bullshit.
Right.
Like I don't want anything else. I want to send and receive. That's the functionality I want.
I
And
agree.
don't change the limit.
What I find so um, hard to understand is why core developers do not seem to appreciate the monetary history associated with Bitcoin. Like if you were a strong student of monetary history, you would seem to be a proponent of, well, let's ossify except if it solves like a problem like quantum resistance or things of these big risks. Like if there's a risk, we need to work on solving that risk so that we don't lose the monetary um, nature of Bitcoin. Whereas
Yeah, I'm
focusing on data and focusing on the code is oftentimes at odds with what is good money. Do you agree?
yeah. Uh, but
It's a tough one. Can you
I
hear me?
lost you there for a sec.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
was just
now I
asking
can hear you again.
if you agree on that concept. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bitcoin is money, and it ought to be money. And ossification is, to me, that's fear mongering too, because Bitcoin cannot ossify. There's no way. It's consensus. Like, sure, it's hard to change, but that's its biggest feature. That's it's supposed to not change unless we really need to change it to such an extent that we all agree that it's a good idea to change it. Which, if you flip that, that means that uh, it can only change for the better because everyone agreed it was a good idea. So we define what a good idea is by did it happen in Bitcoin or not. Like you can flip that on its head, but it's absolutely not supposed to change unless there's overwhelming consensus. And yeah, I do understand there's a difference between uh, consensus rules and mempool policy. That they're uh, and more technical people ought to make these smaller changes, and everyone ought not have an opinion about everything. But if a change causes this much drama and this much um, debate within the community, then something went wrong, horribly wrong for Core. They, at the very least, they didn't communicate this properly, and I think the change is harmful. I'm I'm not the most technical person, but I am economically literate. I do know what money is. I know my Austrian economics. I know my praxeology. Uh, I know my Rothbardian, Misesian, and Hoppian definitions of what I think money is, and uh, so yeah, that's the thing. I think there's a perfect Bitcoiner in my mind is somewhere between economic literacy and computer literacy, and you want ideally you want core developers to be somewhere in the middle, and
Mm-hmm.
you want them to have skin in the game. So
Right.
I wish that core developers that they all had a big stack of Bitcoin and weren't funded by grants, but by their own stacks holding their value.
I
Now,
I
I
had
don't want
that
to
exact
enforce
same
that.
conversation with Cedric a week or two ago, when we were talking about this topic, and it just because and the topic came up because it was like literally, um, we were just questioning, do you think they own Bitcoin? Like,
Yeah,
would you be making these decisions if your entire financial future hinged upon changing that code? Like, what would be the motivation for changing it at that point, right? If you just, because if you look at it, all I can see is we have something that's functioning well, fees are not high, this network is secure, hash rate is high, and you want to make a change. So then okay, well, what does that fix?
yeah,
Doesn't appear to fix anything. Well, then what's the point of the change?
exactly. No,
And
I
if they
agree.
can't answer that efficiently, then we shouldn't have the change.
No, but that like the theory goes, like we are supposed to act and or at least not act. We're supposed to not upgrade if we're not happy with the change. Like that's the only way for the network to put pressure on these people.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I mean, basically, I don't understand what they're fixing. Um, so I guess like the takeaway for me is that if you cannot explain to me the problem you're fixing, then I get very suspicious.
yeah.
And I start to think about like what are they not telling me? What could they be hiding? What's the real purpose of this? Um, and maybe that's just my libertarian or my tinfoil hat personality, but I start to doubt and wonder and question things, and I haven't heard a good answer.
No, and Bitcoiners are supposed to have that kind of mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that we're supposed to be the wait but why guys, you know.
Yeah,
We're
the
uh,
intolerant
the,
minority.
yeah, we're exactly we're not supposed to trust the science. We're supposed to question the science and do proper science, like we're
Mm-hmm.
and do first principles thinking about these things. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, I recommend to not upgrade core right now.
yeah, for sure. So let's move on to praxeology. Perhaps it really kind of informs this entire discussion around core and knots as well. But how does your understanding of praxeology inform your view of Bitcoin and the impacts Bitcoin could have on humanity?
Yeah, to tie this back to the core knots debate, like there can be no empirical evidence in economics. That's one of the core things here, pun intended. Uh, the thing is, the market is always dynamic. It's ever changing, and you can make predictions, but you can't really prove anything by showing me empirical evidence that this happened in the market or that happened in the market. And the reason for that is that human beings have agency. We do things, we value things differently depending on all sorts of factors. What our lives look like, what society around us look like, what the market does. Like everything is just subjective valuations. That's what the market is. And which is also why I don't buy that spammers would put their shit in op return instead of putting it elsewhere on chain, if they were given a bigger op return. So I think that whole thing is, I I think there might be a discrepancy there, because I think many of these Silicon Valley types don't come from that Austrian tradition, or that type of first principles thinking, but they have a more sciencey outlook on the world. And here I'd like to point out a point that Hans Hermann Hoppe makes in one of my favorite books, Economic Science and the Austrian Method, and that is that the empiricists' claim is that we, meaning humanity, cannot know anything to 100% certainty. But that claim in itself is a logical contradiction, which is what Hoppe points out. Because if that is true, then that must be 100% true, which means we can know something to 100% certainty. Because that is not an empirical statement, it's a first principle statement. And therefore, it's contradictory to what it put to itself. And when you come into the Austrian mindset of how to view the world, you find these contradictions in so much around you. Like they are everywhere. Like for instance, we all human conflicts are about scarce goods. We never fight over air because air is abundant and everywhere, so we can all breathe. But we might fight over air if it's compressed into a scuba gear tank, and we're free diving. Then we all of a sudden we have a reason to fight over the air because there's not enough for both of us. So we can resolve all our conflicts. It all boils down to that we have two means of resolving conflict, and one is violence and the other is communication. And a civilized or in other words, we can do barbarism or civilization. That's what we have. We can be civilized or we can be barbaric. And this is at the very core of why an anarcho-capitalist such as myself view non-aggression as the most important principle there is. Because if I interact with you, every time I do anything with you, that does not involve a threat of violence, that is a trade. It's an interaction. It's a value interaction. The reason I'm on this pod is because I find it valuable to be here and talk to you. And the reason you're having me on this pod is because you find it valuable to have me on the pod and talk to me. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. And this is what the free market is. It's nothing more than that. Then we've been fooled into thinking that the free market is something else, because we have all these interventions everywhere, like value-added tax and income taxes and inflation and all of the other interventionist shit that comes and ruins the whole thing. Because what happens whenever you introduce anything that isn't just voluntarism or consensualism, then you skew the incentives, and people start acting in ways that are not guaranteed to be mutually beneficial. I mean, it might be that none of us actually gained anything of value from interacting with one another. But in order for us to do anything voluntarily, we have to believe that we did. It's easier to get what you want with a kind word and a gun than with a kind word. But when there's a gun involved, it's not a positive sum game anymore. One of the one at the barrel end of the gun will lose from doing whatever the guy holding the gun tells him to do. And this is what all taxes and all inflation are. They're aggressive in their very nature. They're non-consensual. So I think you sort of need this kind of mindset to see to understand Bitcoin, you absolutely need it, because you cannot understand a solution before you understand the problem it solves. And the problem it solves is so enormous that we've always lived with it for generations, like since as far back as we can remember. No, no human being in charge of issuing money ever been have ever been able to resist the temptation of issuing too much of it and enriching themselves at the expense of everyone else, which is theft. And it's always existed. So even on a gold standard, where prices were relatively stable, that just means that it's so hard to find gold that the progress in gold finding methods is the same as the progress in basically everything else. So prices remain stable. But in a truly free market where there is something that is absolutely finite that we can denominate the world in, all prices fall, because the true nature of the free market is that it's deflationary. And it's very simple when you really think about it. If you practice doing something, do you become better or worse at the thing you're practicing? Usually
Better.
you become better, right? Yeah. So why aren't all prices falling forever? Because all we do as humans is practice and become better at stuff. We're better at manufacturing, we're better at transportation, we're better at business decisions, we're better at everything now than we were yesterday. And especially with AIs and all sorts of futuristic things that are coming into being, all because of the free market, despite government intervention. They exist and they make us better at everything. So prices ought to reflect that. And if you denominate the world in Bitcoin, they do. So, and that's how Bitcoin can really mindfuck you in a very positive sense. If you actually start seeing the world this way, and you see how fooled you've been throughout your entire life, and how much of your time and effort has been stolen by some shithead that had access to a money printer. You've been the victim of a vicious counterfeiter that just kept on printing and printing and printing and devalued the shit out of your currency your entire life.
Yeah.
You ought to have it so much better. Everything ought to have dropped in price, like by orders of magnitude more than you could ever imagine. And Bitcoin is the first thing that actually shows this to be true, and that actually reflects this nature of the free market, like how beautiful it really is and ought to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most beautiful aspect of it.
And thus,
Yeah, I don't know
your
what question that was an answer to, but it's
well,
some kind of answer
it's.
to something.
I mean, it started with Praxeology, and it went all the way
Yeah,
to everything divided by, or infinity divided by 21 million. Um,
yeah,
and I think that's so true and so overlooked, right? And when I've talked to Wall Street types, financial advisors, they just can't imagine an economy that's equity based that doesn't have inflation. And
no,
I've tried to walk these people through it, and some people grok it, but others are just think there's absolutely no way. But Austrian economics and praxeology would suggest that this is absolutely the most natural form of economic transfer and calculation that you could have. Is that an accurate statement?
yeah, and I mean the we're taught in schools that deflation is super scary and it's a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing, because producers would stop producing shit if they got less and less paid less and less for the shit they produced. But there are so many counterexamples to this that it's ridiculous. Just look at the the progress in computers over the last 50 years. So you have Moore's law making a megabyte half in price every 2.5 years or something. I don't know the exact value, but the point is that it gets exponentially better over time. Like it's super cheap. Like they went to the moon, if they went to the moon. But anyway, with like What kind of computer was that? It didn't even have 64 kilobytes
Yeah,
on the
it
host
was
in it, right?
like
So
100x less computing power than a cell phone today.
yeah, and I mean, a cell phone is made out of sand, and
Hmm.
we turned sand into this because of price signals. Price signals communicated to people what they ought to spend their time doing, and therefore we got this. It's amazing, despite all the uh, tariffs and the taxes that were imposed. We still humanity was still able to come up with that. So and now imagine that we had that there was nothing stopping this. That means 8 billion people working for 8 billion people, everything getting better all the time. And when you think about it, it's super simple. If we didn't aggress against one another, in other words, if we didn't threaten each other or use force for aggression, but respected each other's property rights, everything will get better.
Hmm.
It's super simple. That's what peace is. That's world peace. That's what that is. No aggression. You can't have world peace as long as you have states
Yeah,
because they're based on aggression.
yeah, and
They are
extraction.
perpetually at war with their subjects. That's their very nature. They're criminal organizations with a monopoly of violence in a certain geographical area. End of story.
Hmm.
There's nothing more to it. So all wars are fought by governments. But all the worst crimes in human history, the perpetrators were always states. Uh, like the and I mean, if there's anything else to compare it to, is like a drug cartel or something, or a militia somewhere. But it's an entity trying to be a state.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, and I don't understand why this is so hard for people to understand. Like, if we want to have peace on Earth and everything to be swell, we can't steal. We can't aggress against other human beings. We
Yeah,
can't
and
use
it's
force. We can't be violent.
because well, I guess most of us in the West, right, have lived under this extractive policy in a semi peaceful way, right? Where for the majority of people, right, where they think that they just kind of get indoctrinated into following the process, following the procedure, right? This gets into the legal and lawful side of things, right?
Yeah.
Where people believe that they have to do certain things, that to follow certain uh, uh, legal structures, and it just becomes this extractive process where the government doesn't have to point a gun at your head to get what they want, or
But
it's
they
a
do. But they
subconscious
do.
it's a subconscious gun at your head, right, or something
Yeah.
like that. So because it's not
Well, it's
directly
there's
violent,
always a
they
gun.
fall for it.
It's
Yeah.
always a gun. Like, try not paying your taxes and see what happens. Sooner or later, you're gonna
Yeah,
face a gun. Like,
right.
there's no escaping that. Um,
Yeah, it's so you talked to. I remember you talking about thermodynamics with Bitcoin proof of work and contradicting that to
mhm.
fiat. So
Yeah.
how if fiat is this gun, how does a thermodynamic proof of work protocol offset the power of the gun?
Yeah. I've sort of. I'm not using these analogies that much anymore. The thermodynamic thing
Okay.
and Bitcoin as a battery and stuff, because I always felt it kind of vulgar to mix physics and praxeology, because they
Okay.
oughtn't be mixed really. But there are other ways of explaining it. So the reason we need the proof of work and the energy part of Bitcoin, the only reason for that is to make it cheaper to follow the rules than to try to break them. That's all it does.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it impossible for the miner to cheat themselves to new bitcoins earlier than what the difficulty adjustment algorithm allows for. That keeps the 10 minutes, which keeps the 2 weeks, which, like, it makes the system function. Uh, so that's why we need that, because otherwise, like, the thing is, Bitcoin, if human beings were honest, we wouldn't need Bitcoin at all. If human beings were honest, we could just have a spreadsheet, and we could task someone with keeping checks and balances on the spreadsheet. It would be much more efficient than Bitcoin. It would be better in every sense. The only reason we need the proof of work is because no human being have ever not abused the ability to print more money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's seen as this wonderful thing, and Bitcoin is energy, money, and all of this, but it, all it fixes is a flaw within human beings, that we are assholes
Mm-hmm.
who can't help ourselves. That's the only reason we need it. If we could trust the central bank not to print money, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Uh, but we can't.
we can't, and
Uh,
it's I mean, yeah, I know, I saw that.
so it's no, but it's the same thing over and over again. Like, and people see this. That's why I get so irritated when I see like the blockchain as an innovation or something. Like, the problem it fixes is trust in human beings, like, to not print money. That's the only reason we need the thing. So, uh, and decentralization, uh, even that, I view that as an unfortunate means to a greater end. The greater end being sound money, being damn near perfect money. But decentralization itself, there's no benefit to that. It would be much better if we just had one guy deciding everything and we could trust that guy.
Right,
But now we can't. But we can't. So that's why we need the decentralization.
right,
Uh,
right. Yeah, and that's so that kind of comes, so many things you said there, right? The reason why uh, crypto is so flawed is because you cannot, like, if you have a founder, if you have a creator who's in control of a product or project or foundation, that
yeah.
you can't trust them to make decisions that are better for
No.
humanity. Their incentives are misaligned. Um, if if you've got a decentralized protocol like Bitcoin, then the incentives are to play by the rules, and so decentralization just becomes a means to the end, as
Yeah.
opposed to a solution for everything, which I see so many people in crypto,
No.
right, wanted to just, well, let's just decentralize everything. There's a
No. It's one of those
decentralized chain for
buzzwords,
everything now,
and
right?
yeah. No. And and same thing with a proof of work. A lot of people use the term proof of work as if it's a thing in itself that is valuable.
Mm,
But proof of work in any other context than to secure Bitcoin and keep Bitcoin decentralized,
right.
uh, and secure, it's just Marx labor theory of value. Like, just because I work a lot doesn't mean that what I produce is valuable to other people. It's very Marxist to think that. Like, what I'm supposed to show is proof of results, which I think is a much better term. Like, I don't care how long it took the author to write the book. I don't care how long it took the composer to write the song, or uh, the builder to build the house. I care about the house. I care about the book. I care about the song. Like, you see
Yep.
what I mean? I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, people are different. Some people are very good at, you know, focusing and working tirelessly for years and years on a massive project. Other people just, like some of my favorite creators, Matt and Trey of South Park fame. They make every a South Park episode in 6 days. It's like they don't care, but they care a lot during those 6 days, and they have a very fast process, and they found ways of being efficient with it, right? And I think they're still absolutely brilliant. And for me, my process, like 95% of it is just taking long walks and thinking about things. Like, the actual writing is pretty fast. Uh, but I don't aim for 100% perfection. I like, and I mostly do it because I like to do it. So like, it's not proof of work. It's like, uh, uh, no, and that confusion, I see that a lot in Bitcoin. People think they're valuable just because they realize that they can work hard. anyone can work hard. That's like
Yep.
can you provide a good or a service that the market actually wants? That's the real question.
I think that, and I've heard other people say it, but it seems to me like money, and because people are so desirable of money, seems to be like the only real use case for decentralization.
Yeah, but it's still unfortunate that it's necessary.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
It would be better if we could just trust some guy,
right. Um, the meme.
because it's a great big burden, and it's expensive to run all of those computers. It's
Yes.
expensive to find new bitcoins. That's why, but still, if it wasn't, but we could still have them be finite uh, somehow, and still have them be, you know, uh, t- given out to people without necessarily favoring inside traders or
Right.
whatever. Like that would be great,
It's
but we
it's
can't.
literally, it's like Satoshi literally assembled technologies to protect it from humanity.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's
yeah,
just sort of dawning on me that it's not. It wasn't as much to make the protocol work in a specific way as it was to make sure that humans can't ruin it.
exactly. And there's another thing that I think Bitcoiners in general to focus too much on. Like they think that it's necessary for Satoshi to be this Jesus-like figure and
Mm.
martyr and whatever. It was so courageous of him to disappear. We have no idea why he disappeared,
Hmm.
unless you actually know him. But like, I find that unlikely. Uh, but we don't know if he was an altruistic martyr or if he was an asshole or whatever. Like he might have just, you know, stopped believing in the thing. He might have actually moved on to other things, as he said he did. He might have been run over by a bus the day after. You know,
Hmm.
there are so many things. Satoshi might be a group of people that are in a sort of Mexican standoff situation with one another. Uh, but painting Satoshi as this messianic figure, I think that's dangerous too. Like I know how to use Pythagoras theorem. I think the theorem is fantastic for explaining the relationship between the sides of a triangle and the hypotenuse. Like I love it. But I have no clue who the guy was and if he was a good guy or a bad guy. And
Hmm.
I don't care.
Hmm.
Like it's like when a fisherman finds a beautiful fish, it's the fish that's beautiful, not the fisherman. And I try to view my work this way as well. Like I try to remember to put my ego aside and say, like, if I stumble upon a good passage in a book, it's the passage that's beautiful, not me. Like, and I think uh, that's uh, that's what staying humble and stacking sats means.
Right.
Like be proud of your work. But not your necessarily your person. You want your arguments to be good. You want the things you put out there. You want to be able to be proud of them. But it's the stuff that is beautiful, not the person.
So from that perspective, then, with the memes, like, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. How
Yeah.
how do you find, and I'm just kind of re-looking at this thought now from the perspective of Satoshi assembling this technology to protect it from humanity. Um, how does it how I guess we could start with how it impacts you, but the greater scheme, how do you think Bitcoin impacts humanity from a moral or philosophical perspective?
Uh, uh, Here I often talk about my grandfather saying that which you can do without your own, and I think this is what Bitcoin inevitably does to the person holding it, because what happens when you have a deflationary thing to view the world through is that you start prioritizing quantity over quality, or quality over quantity,
Hmm.
because in inflation land consumerism is a big thing. because you know that if you don't spend your money now, it'll buy you less and less in the future. If you have a money that buys you more and more in the future, you think twice before buying something. So you will be more careful with uh, your economic decisions, meaning that you will buy what you actually need, uh, and less shit. So I think that what that leads to is the insight, the deeper insight there, or at least this is the vector, like where it takes humanity, is the insight that that which you can do without, you own. If you don't crave a thing, you don't need it, then you actually own it because it does not own you. You
Mm,
psychologically own it. Uh, so being a I mean
interesting.
I try to live my life as minimalistic as I can. I mean, I have a family to support and they don't agree with all of those decisions, of course, but I want to be able to drink well and eat well and travel. That's And have a decent computer to be able to do these things, have good conversations with people. But other than that, I don't really care about material possessions. And
That's
I
so
think that
true. I
that's what
Bitcoin. So I know Bitcoin did this for me, right? Like many people got into this because of like, oh, number go up. This is going to be great. I can make some money. And then I noticed that even through my first big bear market, I started to believe in the wealth, even though price was going down. And then I just started to feel abundant, and
yep.
I started to feel wealthy, even though my value of Bitcoin was dropping precipitously. And it so I recognized immediately that Bitcoin does have this impact on our mental state. And I've been always kind of curious as to how does this frickin' protocol change people like that? It's just mind blowing to me.
No, and it changes people much more. Like it has such a great impact. I know, just the feeling that my I'm taken care of now financially, probably forever, because I have this thing that they cannot take. Like it empowers you with so much more, self confidence and all sorts of stuff. And to me, I mean, everything you know me for happened after Bitcoin.
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
nobody gave a crap about Knut Svanholm's life before Bitcoin. I can tell you that. And it's so. But I started daring to put myself out there and write these books and do travel around the world and do talks and stuff. I mean, I traveled the world before also, but not in the capacity of a performer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's giving me so much, in just in terms of uh like we're brought up in this world where you're supposed to have academic credentials and a fancy job title and all that shit that came with our parents' generation, right? That you sort of needed that to be listened to. If you were a doctor, everyone was shut up when you started talking. Uh, but I figured out pretty early on that having a book is way better than having a CV. If you've written a book, like people start listening to you all of a sudden, even though you you just came up with it. I- it doesn't really matter, but like if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? So, and I think Bitcoin had a big part in unlocking that for me. Uh, I mean, I still remember the first pod I ever did like this with Pierre Card back in 2019 or something.
Very cool.
And it's like I struggled to find the words. I was super nervous and stuff. And now it's like, I mean, I do this every day now
Mm.
almost. So yeah, it definitely changed something within. And I think this has to do with the simple fact that we are our Bitcoins. That since the Satoshi is special because they're a part of us, because it's all about keeping a secret. And if this is also another one of my talking points, my standard talking points, since you benefit from number go up, I benefit from number go up. So what is the success of Bitcoin? It's the success of Bitcoiners. It's the same thing. you having success in your life and me having success in my life are entirely connected. We both benefit from each other doing well, and that is true for not only us two but every other Bitcoiner in the world. I have something to gain from their lives being great.
Yeah.
And you
It's
know
very
how awesome
special.
that is.
I know
What that means?
there's
It
nothing
means
like that.
we're incentivized to be great to one another. It's
Yeah,
just fantastic.
it
Like,
is.
that's why this community is so much better than any other community I've ever been in, because and you can weed out the bad seeds really fast, because people who haven't understood that aspect of it, it's like, what are you doing here? We and if you're ever out having dinner with Bitcoiners or beers or whatever, we're fighting about picking up the bill. I mean, it's always, I mean, that always happens in Curtis society, I guess. But with Bitcoiners, it's special. Like, we're really good at wanting the best for the other person and
Yeah.
just providing value to your fellow man, and then everything else comes naturally after that. And once you unlock that, like, it's like this was always there. Like, this is how we are supposed to function. Human beings are just supposed to be good to one another. It's so easy, and when we are, that just unlocks everything. So that aspect of it is just makes me think of, like, add that as icing on top of the free market cake.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, super tight competition and
Absolutely.
only the best win. But at the same time, we're incentivized to be awesome to one another. It's nothing but good.
Yeah, and there's nothing else like it in the world. There's no other financial game where you're incentivized to help, educate, and teach people to use the system, to use the protocol, because we all benefit. So, I guess to end this, and with that in mind, if you were to speak to a new Bitcoiner today, what would be your advice in regards to a book to read, a meme to follow, a general philosophical principle? There they are.
Well, you can start by reading my books. I think the two most recent, I have recency bias, of course, but the two latest ones are the best ones. So that's Bitcoin, the Inverse of Clown World, and Praxeology. I think you get most of my ideas through those. There are many other great Bitcoin books, of course. Uh, I would be, you know, I have so many friends that have written Bitcoin books, so I won't recommend a specific one except for my books. But there are many great ones out there. Make sure that they're not about crypto, but about Bitcoin, though.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can
And you
finish
have
by
a you
saying
have
my
a
other.
website out as well that people can
Yeah,
visit?
Bitcoin Infinity. Yeah, bitcoininfinity.com. So apart from writing books, I travel around and talk about Bitcoin, and I also do something called the Bitcoin Infinity Academy, which is me talking, reading my own books. And there's a video essay every week where Luke, the co-author for Bitcoin: The Inverse of Clown World, and my co-host and producer, he reads the books chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph. So every week there's a new episode. We're on my second book, Independence Reimagined, at the moment. So we're reading that, and we're releasing them all for free, chapter by chapter, on Noster. So if you want to check that out more, you can go to geyser.fund/projects/infinity. So a long address, but there you can support us and get a bundle of books and whatnot, and access to the live recordings. But this is what we do, and then there's the Bitcoin Infinity Show, where we have guests on every week. There's a bunch of good ones coming up this fall. So make sure you follow that too. And yeah, the website is bitcoininfinity.com. Uh,
Wonderful.
and yeah, and I'm on X. That's where I'm mostly active. I'm on Noster as well. Uh,
Well,
so
Knut,
that's where you'll find my work.
it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much from you over the years. Your writings, your podcast. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I look forward to meeting you in person someday.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on. See you at the next conference.
Thank you.